הנה אנחנו מתחילים.
Here we go.
ברוכות וברוכים השבים למליאת הצהריים.
Welcome back to the afternoon plenum,
הכנס השנתי של קרן ברל
the
כצנלסון.
annual conference of the Berl Katznelson Foundation. Today, as you probably felt already, is intended to remind us that we have something to hold on, that we have enough power, we have enough knowledge, and mainly we have enough people beside us to change reality. So thank each and every one of you for coming here today. Thank you for not giving up on democratic Israel, for fighting in the streets for 3 years, for waking up after October 7th and understanding that in order to rehabilitate Israel, we have to apply our full force and make sure that we win. We're full of hope that this day gives you a new perspective and mainly more power and energy to continue on this journey. This hall, with over 1,500 partners sitting here, is the change that we all need. And now, I'd like to invite Knesset member, Major General Benny Gantz, and former Minister of Defense. Good afternoon, everyone. Those of you who were able to get back here after lunch. And before I start my speech, I would like to say a few words because it's impossible and it isn't right to speak today without mentioning 58 of our brothers and sisters, sons and daughters who are being held by Hamas. These days are significant and important days, and my party will back any outline that will bring back the hostages. We will continue to act for replacing this government, but we won't destroy it because of a hostage deal, because in our opinion, that's the most important thing we have to do today in order to rehabilitate ourselves and continue to face all of the challenges that the state of Israel faces. Now, we understand that we're living in a political. I'm here today to talk to you honestly, and I'm asking you, I hope you agree with me, but I'm asking that you listen, because I want to tell you about a conversation that I had yesterday with Moshe Moreno. Emmanuel Moreno, the late Emmanuel Moreno's brother. We all remember him, although we cannot show his picture until today, and whose son Itai fell in the war. Moshe started the conversation with me with a statement saying that he's sick of what's happening in the country and sick of the diversion. But then he said something else that was very painful. He said that he feels that every day my party is spitting in his face. And he gave me examples. These are conversations that I have with many people who voted for the coalition parties. And the gap with them is usually emotional and less ideological. And it's not that there aren't differences. After all, Gadi Eisenkot and I and Chili Tropler, we didn't see things. And some of the people in the coalition want Haredis to be recruited just as much as we do, and they believe in their way in a democratic Israel. But when I meet Likudniks in shawarma in Sderot, because I moved to Yad Mordechai, they feel that on the other side, people want to surrender to Hamas, that people hate religion, hate tradition. As a liberal, and I believe that I'm standing here before liberals, I tell them, and I'm telling you, we should listen to them. The majority of them aren't brainwashed people. Many of them are patriots and smart people. I suggest that we ask ourselves, why does Moshe Moreno think that when a judge from Beersheba says that the religious are worse than Hamas, why is that related to us? After all, we're liberal. We respect every person, every religion. And I'm telling you, we will stand with our opinions, we'll stand with our attitudes, with our activities, but it requires us to dig in and think. The last years in Israel have been crazy. October 7th was the pinnacle. What haven't we tried? We united, we established parties, we got mandates, more mandates, less mandates. We tried everything. That's why we have to think differently. But in the political arena as well, the change government was a government that worked for the citizens, and it was 1,000 times better than the current government. And although it was 1,000 times better than the current nightmare government, it failed twofold, unfortunately. After all, I was given the offer to be prime minister before then. But no, I thought we have to establish the change government, and I moved aside in order to establish it. But it didn't survive politically. It was paralyzed. We walked as if we were walking on eggshells. We avoided legislative regulation, which partners in the coalition refused to promote. We were unable to promote an outline for true and real service. We decided proactively not to touch it. On the other side of Israeli society, this government, that you remember, it was 1,000 times better than the current government. It was a wake-up call. It gave many in the right bloc a sense that their vote was stolen, that they were spit on, and in that is, to a great extent, is the fuel for establishing a real right government with a Kahanist like Ben Gvir. And that's the truth. It's difficult to hear. We have to recognize that that is the truth. I suggest that we listen. I suggest that we listen, and don't tell me that I went with Bibi, because in both cases, if you yelled at me, now you have to listen to me. If you yelled at me, now you're going to listen. I'm telling you that we went with the unified government when you didn't leave the house because there was closure. And there were elections and elections and elections, and you couldn't get out of the house. And two, someone said she'd leave here now. So let her get up and say she's sorry. On October 7th, I have daughters. I have a daughter. Her name is Noga. I couldn't not identify with her. I want you to think of what was done to them on October 7th. What happened to them when they were in Gaza? They said, stay home and fight Bibi. No, I'll go and save the country when that's what needs to be done. Now, let me get back on track. Please let me get back on track. Because at the end of the day, you know. You know. I heard, and I suggest that we don't discuss this in this forum. Let me explain what happened. I went to a conference and I was there to talk about defending the justice system. And I was on the same streets with you and in other places. Yes, I was. And a person stood to speak in a liberal forum and no one let him talk. So I suggest that you criticize me, you don't agree with me, it's all fine. But in order to respect yourself, I suggest that you let me speak. When I'm talking about a national consensus government, I don't mean a paralysis government. The broad consensus between us. And with what we call the other side of the political arena, they shall be the foundation with which we can enable ourselves to touch upon the open wounds that we haven't touched in years in the Constitution, in religion and state, in service of the state, and also on the political manner. I want to remind you, there were things that were done by the Likud, and we have to continue to promote them. I believe in them. How many people in politics wear a dove of peace on their chest? How many people dream about it and do something about it? How many people have met with Abu Mazen and see what could be done? So I think we have to do things. And it's time to turn Israel from a Bibi and anti-Bibi faction into a central bloc against extremists and populists. That's what we have to do. And the big question in the upcoming elections is, are we seeking consensus or decisions? On both sides, or victory. On both sides, there are people who prefer victory. That's what my colleague Yair Golan thinks. I respect him, but I think he's wrong in this case. I think that even if there's 61 or 64 Knesset members who establish a change government, it would only exacerbate the problem in the long term. In this being the situation, the protests that we saw with the legal, then there'll be another opposition and there'll be elections again, and Ben Gvir will get 20 mandates instead of disappearing. My friends, I believe we want to defeat our enemies outside of the border and reach consensus within in the Israeli society. And therefore, what I think should be done is to achieve a coalition of 75 Knesset members that will serve 100% of the citizens of Israel. That's what needs to be done. I believe that the next elections are elections on the ability of the Israeli majority to isolate the extremists and to reach agreements between the blocs. I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that this is the solution. And I know that Netanyahu can't lead it because he's the father of the partition. And I think, and I say this humbly, I think I'm the right person to lead a government like that. I know because I know how to talk, not just with the political leadership on all sides, but also and mainly with Israeli society, from Yad Mordechai to Kiryat Shmona, from Taibe and to Ofakim. I suggest that you don't mistake me or my friends. It's not a political strategy. It's my belief in a proper method that sees the needs of the state of Israel, that goes straight ahead with what the country needs. And it's the path that I will continue to take if I have 40 mandates or 4 mandates, and no matter what the personal or political price, I will do everything, all I can, to unify Israel and save us from a civil war that's just around the corner. Thank you very much. Thank you, Benny Gantz. On October 25th, 1994, the Israeli government signed the peace agreement with Jordan. The late Yitzhak Rabin said the following: Mr. Chairperson, Knesset members, the peace treaty submitted to the Knesset today is a balanced document that can be seen as meeting its demands, because only peace where both parties are satisfied is sustainable. In this peace, there are no losers. We all win here. This is the second peace treaty for Israel since the one with Egypt, signed by late Menachem Begin. Since then, nothing was done to establish the Jewish state. The peace agreement means that we no longer will be alone. It's a deep, a profound, and important change. It will impact all of us, from the truck from Amman to the ship in Haifa. Business people will fly in the morning to close a deal and return to Jerusalem, and families will go to visit Petra, 3 hours from Tel Aviv. This change will impact the lives of all of us. 31 years have gone by since then, and 46 years have gone by since signing the agreement with Egypt. They were both accompanied by a great public outcry. But the peace accords between Israel and its neighbors have been proving itself since then. And anyone who needed further proof got it after October 7th. Our journalist Ayelet Shani will speak to the retired Deputy Chief Justice Eliakim Rubinstein. The slide says, it is possible. How did the peace treaties design Israel's security and future?
ככה.
זה המצב היום, משתיקים את השופטים.
This is the way things are today. They silence the judges.
שלום אדוני.
Good afternoon.
אני חושבת שכדאי אולי
I
שנתחיל
think that
באיזושהי
perhaps we should start with a short general presentation of the topic, and you could tell the audience about your part in all of the peace agreements that Israel signed until today, and also the attempts that were not as successful.
טוב, קודם כל, תודה על ההזמנה.
Thank you for
כמו
inviting
שאמרו לי,
me.
מדבר זה
And
טיפה אסקפיזם, ככה, כי
what we can talk about is a
זה
bit
היסטוריה,
escapist
זה
because it's
nostalgia,
history, it's nostalgia.
We are checking what's going on and updating soon. Just a second. Sorry about that. It wasn't an easy speech to hear, Gantz, so I hope you all took it in a good way. We're still working on it. Just a second. Okay, they lost the internet over there, so just a second, bear with us. Hopefully it will come back soon. So in the meanwhile, while they're trying to come back, just to add on what Benny Gantz was saying and give you some context, it's one of those moments where, again, Benny Gantz is what we call the center. Some will call radical center, meaning like he always needs to be in between what it is right and left, no matter if the right is extreme or not. And as of now, at least, it seems like he's losing ground to Bennett, who is coming up as the alternative center-right. He was basically speaking around this conference when the conference is really focusing on strengthening the democracy, no matter if it's good or bad from a center perspective. So that's why he got the feedback from the audience, and he had to respond to it. So again, just a commentary on what you have seen, because sometimes it's hard to understand context. And we're still waiting. Okay. We're getting there. Sorry about that. If you haven't got it yet, yesterday a member of the Knesset, Naama Lazimi, had an amazing speech on the Knesset. I only posted it so far on X. Oh, here we are. We're back. Hold on. Tomer, if you can unmute. Just a second, we don't hear it yet.
המלאה לא הצלחנו להשיג עם אף אחת מבנות הברית הללו, ורציתי לשאול אותך, האם אתה חושב באמת
Wanted to ask you, do you think in the reality of the Middle East, do you think a warm and true peace is a realistic option? Is cold peace a possibility? What's the difference between a cold peace and the other options, like managing the conflict or maintaining defensive visibility? It's a good question. We mentioned the security system earlier and the border crossings with Jordan and Egypt. With both of those countries, there's a whole set of bilateral agreements that used to be called normalization. With Egypt, we have cultural trade. We established an Israeli academic center in Cairo. And the Israeli government was very enthusiastic. Former Minister of the Industry, Yoram Zeev, were very enthusiastic, euphoric with these agreements. And the same is for Jordan a little later, because it's an Israeli sense that we want a peace that will be complete. It's not exactly what we would have wanted. We didn't assume back then that every Israeli would respect every Egyptian or Jordanian. But we assumed in Rabin's speech and in Begin's speech before then, there was a hope that it would be different than previous situations. There was true hope. Just like the agreement with Lebanon, we took very seriously, and we put in civilian issues as well. The reality in the Middle East is what it is, and the Palestinian issue, which hasn't been resolved fully, and we haven't really succeeded up till now, that shadows the situation. I'll say what I think, that in Egypt, Sadat, maybe I'll say parenthetically, I was at the airport when Sadat arrived. I was then the assistant to Moshe Dayan as foreign minister, and he called me at the beginning of the evening and asked if I would like to come to the airport. I wasn't on the list because of my rank yet. And I said that, and I came with him, and I returned from the airport where I was sitting by the driver and he was with Boutros Ghali, who was an Egyptian minister. Why am I saying this? Because being at the airport, and seeing the airplane land and Sadat coming out of it with all the dignitaries that welcomed him. You could hear the wings of history, because 10 days before then, that makes me a little bit optimistic. 10 days earlier, when Sadat said he'd be willing to reach the Knesset or come to Jerusalem, we thought it was just rhetoric. But a day or two later, we found out that he was serious. And suddenly he was here, just 10 days later. By the way, Sadat and Begin were nothing alike. But one thing they did have in common, they were both dramatic. And I guess that's important in international politics. Sadat was willing to go into the drama. Begin sent the invitation. And to me, that's a moment, a defining moment for me. And as for the quality of the peace, I don't think we have to be satisfied with what we have, but we have to constantly remind them that we have agreements and commitments to more significant issues. But we're one party and there's another party, and I'm not justifying the constraints of any of them, but we're living reality. And if reality enables what it does, and we should push to make it enable more. But we shouldn't diminish or look lightly on what we do have. I won't go into detail with Egypt, but we have civil issues with Jordan. There used to be a minister, the late Baraftig, and when Israel celebrated 50 years, we asked him what it looked like. He said, more than I hoped, less than I expected. Or maybe more than I hoped, less than I expected. More than I expected, less than I hoped. Over the years, Israel chose to surrender a great deal in order to retain the accords. It chose to accept all kinds of violations. Now that you look at the agreements, especially the one with Egypt, which was groundbreaking, do you think we went wrong? And if so, where? And if we haven't gone wrong, what have you learned from that for the agreements that came afterwards? I'm going to tell you an anecdote. There are many, and I'll make it short. When we started the normalization agreements, there was a civil aviation agreement, and the Egyptians said, we can't bring Egypt Air then until you don't leave Sinai. We knew, by the way, that whatever we don't get by April 1982, we wouldn't get. So we were frantic. I was the legal counsel for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So they said,
שנקים לצורך
we'll
העניין.
bring in a different company
אז
that will
השם של
establish a
של
different
המפעל
airline,
הפרח
and it'll be called Lotus.
אבל אנחנו אמרנו להם לא טוס, לא יטוס, לא
But
מתאים
we
לנו
said Lotus in Hebrew, Lotus is no fly.
אז הם החליפו לנפרטיטי. ואחר כך
So
זה
they
היה,
changed it to Nefertiti.
כבר הייתה נסיגה שלמה, זה היה, פינינו את סיני, זה היה
Then when we pulled out of Sinai, it was Egypt Air.
אני גם זכיתי לקבל את השגריר המצרי הראשון.
I also welcomed the first Egyptian ambassador. I was VP for implementing the agreement with Egypt, and I welcomed him at the airport. He had a cold. I know Arabic, and he showed me the text that he wants to read, so he asked that I translate it to English and Hebrew. He gave me his text, and I saw that a large part of it was why he isn't reading in Jerusalem. So, of course, translating that, he was a very nice man who was expelled from Morocco because of the agreement with us. So he read his text and coughed the whole time. And I also coughed the whole time that I was translating it.
ואולי עוד אחד היה קטע שאחד הקצינים שלנו ישבנו איתם.
One of our officers wanted to accelerate the intermediate pullout because I think Sadat really wanted to get all of Sinai back and have their sovereignty there. Palestinians was the second issue. For Palestinians, for the Americans, the Palestinians was the most important part because Carter really wanted a homeland for the Palestinians. We wanted peace with Egypt, the biggest Arab country. So the Egyptians wanted a faster intermediate pullout. One of our officers said that in Yiddish, there's a saying that's taken from the Turkish War. It says, kill a Turk and rest.
Why kill a Turk? We are in such good relations. אנחנו ביחסים נהדרים עם טורקיה. למה להרוג טורקי? אז היה מי שהציל את המצב, נחשו מי?
So someone saved the day and said he meant a turkey, not a Turk.
ויש עוד סיפורים, נעזוב את זה עכשיו. אבל השאלה של אם היו שגיאות,
the question of if there were mistakes, I don't think we had many mistakes with the Egypt. I think that the state of Israel, over the years and from the beginning, they understood the importance. I don't know exactly what the story is now in Sinai, whether we have forces there or less. We gave them help because of ISIS at the time. But regarding Jordan, and because I'm well-versed on the history, I want to say something that's relevant to all of our neighbors, and that's respect. In Judaism, respect is also very important. Having respect is very important. In the world around us, there's great importance to the issue of respect, and I have many examples and anecdotes as well, but we don't have time. But I think that when you talk about peace agreements, you forget that it's a very emotional event. It really brings everything, all of the negotiators to an emotional extreme, to express anger. When I led the negotiations, I felt that it was very important to gain trust through respect, through knowing the culture of the other side, knowing the language of the other side. And there were two chief negotiators in Jordan. One was Dr. Majadli and the other was Dr. Tarani. Both passed away. Majali was a very respectable man. And he took an interview with an Arab newspaper, and he said that the Israeli is very respectful for us because he opens the door for me. So naturally, you open the door for him. So, or one time he was sick. So I asked him, "What's your mother's name?" He says, "Why do you need my mother's name?" So I said, "Because I'll pray for you. I'll do a Misha Berach for you." So in his memories in Arabic, he wrote that. He considered it something that was humane, respectful. And the other one said that the Israeli knew Arabic, knew the Quran, and their delegation didn't know anyone who knew the Israeli culture. What I'm saying, it's not to say how wonderful I am. The issue of respecting the other side, the other party, it doesn't matter. It's strategic, national strategy doesn't matter, but it creates trust, and then trust is very important. Humor is also worthwhile. That I can say with President Reagan and Bush Sr. and the Jordans, they really liked, and King Hussein too, and Prince Hassan. They liked the humoristic banter that we had. I'll give you an example from Majali. We would come to Washington, and it went slowly because they relied on the Palestinians, and we signed a preliminary agenda. It was signed publicly 10 months after we signed it secretly in Washington because they were. And Majali was also sorry that we didn't move fast enough. And he said that every culture has the town of idiots. And Jordan has two, Tafila and Sana. He said two of those cities, two of those townspeople were set. He said, "You see the midget? He's going to kill the giant soon." He said, let's place a bet. And so he said, "Why shouldn't you take the 5 dinar from me?" He says, "Because I already saw the movie 3 times. And it wouldn't be fair for me to take it." So the other one said, "I've seen the movie 5 times, but I thought maybe this time would be different." So in case of Jordan, maybe this time it will be different. And that takes us to our last question, because our time's up. In the volatile political climate here today, where we can't think of peace, and what do you think of this absolute victory? How would you persuade someone like that with peace as a true solution?
אם היית שואל אותי על המהפכה המשפטית, יש הרבה
If
מה
you'd asked me
להגיד,
about the
אבל
legal revolution, I have a lot to say.
טראומטי שהלכתי כל שבוע
For
עם
me, it was
המשפחה,
traumatic, and I used to protest every week in Jerusalem until the war started because I thought it was destructive to a structure that we established, and I could talk about that for hours, but I won't do it because we don't have hours. I won't talk about the issue of removing Bibi from office because not only is it sensitive, but I don't want to give legal counsel when there's a legal advisor whom I respect very much and who has strong back.
אבל אני רוצה בכל זאת לגבי השאלה. אני אגיד את זה
But
ככה.
about the question, I'll say it like this.
היו לנו הצלחות מסוימות והיו לנו
We
הרבה
had
הצלחות.
certain successes and disappointments, but we're not going anywhere. And our neighbors aren't going anywhere, not the Palestinians and not the other countries. But the Abraham Accords were very good. I'd be happy if there were more.
ואני אומר את זה, אני לא...
I think
באמת, לגיל יש...
And I'm saying that age has its benefits.
הניסיון צורב בך גם צלקות וגם מותיר זיכרונות טובים.
It gives you experience, scars, and good memories.
החייל שנמצא בעזה,
I think that the soldier in Gaza or Lebanon or Syria or wherever we're at,
מה ההשקפות שלו האישיות,
it doesn't matter what his personal views are because there are many,
נלחמים כתף ליד כתף,
and our soldiers fight side by side.
הגוונים הציבוריים. נכדה שלנו קיבלה, תסלחו לי על השוויץ של סבא, נכדה שלנו קיבלה הצטיינות לא מזמן בצבא.
Granddaughter was recently awarded an accolade in the army, and we were at the ceremony. And parents and grandparents were there, were from a myriad of the population. And that soldier must know that even in the difficult hours, there's someone in Jerusalem or people in Jerusalem who are thinking of how to get out of it, how to reach peace. And I'm saying it here to an audience that agrees with me, but I'll say it to any audience, even if it's an audience of people from other political aspects. It's important and that no one forgets it, because even people who were at a political extreme that wasn't natural to some of these efforts, even Begin, Shamir, and Rabin, I worked with them all. I don't think we should forget the idea of reaching a political agreement. I know it won't be tomorrow morning, and it won't happen with the Palestinians because we know what reality is. But reality isn't eternal, it's dynamic. It's more complicated than it was with Egypt, but even there it wasn't easy, not internally, not externally, but we did it. So I want to hope that with God's help, we'll be able to get through the future. Thank you, Ayelet Shani, and retired Judge Eliakim Rubinstein. Now, I'm pleased to invite Knesset member Mansour Abbas, chairperson of Ra'am. Thank you, I appreciate it very much.
מאז שנכנסתי לכנסת בעצם
Since I joined the
המחויבות
Knesset,
שלי כלפי כל אזרחי
my
מדינת
commitment
ישראל
toward
רק
all
הלכו וגדלו
citizens
ולא רק
of
לגביהם.
Israel only increased,
אזרחי מדינת ישראל.
not just toward the Arabs.
זאת התוצאה של המפגשים האלו. שלום.
That's the result of the
אני כבר
encounters.
נטשתי את זה. בעצם ביום הראשון שבו נכנסתי לכנסת
On my first day in the Knesset, I thought that if we want to reach different solutions, reach achievements, and change the situation in favor of all of the civilians, we have to be partners in action, in self-criticism, and try to lend a hand. And indeed, we prove that Israeli society at large is a dynamic society, flexible, where partnerships can be made and processes led. And we proved it in the previous term when we established a government that was diverse, serving all of the citizens of the country. That's the model for the future of Israel and Israeli society, and it's also the future of the Arab society. I'm pleased to tell you that survey after survey, and that we do, and that research institutes do, 75 to 80% of the Arab public supports the idea of civil partnership, which brings good tidings to all citizens of Israel. There's also a vision on the civil level and also on the political level. About 2 months ago, I published a document, an initiative. I called it the Bridges of Appeasement and Peace. Bridges because we consider ourselves bridges between the civilian identity and national identity, both being Israeli citizens and Arab Palestinians. And we can play a positive and active role on this level. But we also said, I said there too, that we don't need a cold peace. We need appeasement between the nations. Peace is made between countries, and it's usually called, it gets warm when there's appeasement between the nations, between the people. And therefore, we do not despair. We have to give hope both to the Palestinian people, the Jewish people. We have to give hope to all the peace seekers in our region. And I'm telling you that we have a historic opportunity before us, despite the crisis and the painful images that we see from all of the sides, and the endless pain that cannot be compared to say that my pain is greater than yours. But following that pain, we have to give hope and move forward and believe that from this abyss, from this crisis, we can set out to a new path. I think that within months, if we combine two approaches, one of promoting a bilateral political outline and a multilateral outline, combining an upgraded Oslo Accord with an upgraded normalization outline that includes the Israeli and Palestinian issue, then I think that within months we'll be able to reach a new reality that contradicts the current reality. I believe it can be done. Even a country like Syria is starting to just talk about a process in this regard. And if the conversation with Eliakim
התמקדה
Rubinstein,
מסביב לשאלה הזאת,
focused
השלום הקר הזה, איך
on
אפשר להפוך אותו לשלום
how
חם,
can
ומה
cold
היינו
peace
צריכים
be
לעשות
turned
כדי
into warm
להפוך
peace, and what should we have
את השלום
done
הקר לחם.
to turn the cold
חברים,
peace
מה
into a
לעשות?
warm
כל
one.
עוד לא פותרים
There's
את
nothing we can do
הסכסוך
so long as we
הבסיסי
don't solve the basic
הישראלי-פלסטיני,
conflict,
אף פעם לא
basic
יהיה
Israeli
שלום חם.
Palestinian conflict. There won't be
מי
warm
שנותן
peace.
אנרגיה, חום,
Anyone who
פיוס,
invests
סובלנות,
energy,
קבלה, הכרה
tolerance,
בין שני
acceptance,
הצדדים, זה יפתור
recognition
את
to both of the
הסכסוך
parties
הישראלי-פלסטיני.
is solving the Israeli-Palestinian dispute.
שלום בין מדינות מצליח תמיד.
Peace between countries
אפילו
always
אם הוא שלום
succeeds,
קר, ומחזיק
even
מעמד.
if it is cold peace, and it lasts.
שלום בין מדינה וארגון אף פעם לא יצליח.
A peace between a country and an organization will never succeed.
להגיע להסדרה עם תנועת
Benjamin
חמאס.
Netanyahu's
זה לא
government
עבד ולא
wanted to
יעבוד.
reach an agreement with
מטבעם,
Hamas.
מדינות
It
אידיאולוגיות
didn't work and it won't.
לא מוכנות להגיע לפשרות.
Neither are willing
וגם
to
כאשר
settle
המדינה
or
משתלטת
compromise.
תנועות
And
אידיאולוגיות
even
שמנהלות אותה, כמו
when
מה
a
שאנחנו
country
רואים
is
עכשיו,
taken
אף פעם
over
לא
by
נצליח להגיע
ideologies,
לשלום.
as we see
חברים,
now,
מי
we'll never
שקובע
be able to
פועל
achieve
זה לא
peace.
האמירות של יאיר גולן.
Ladies and gentlemen,
האמירות של סמוטריץ'.
it's not
אנחנו
Yair
נפרוץ,
Golan who's hurting
נשתק,
Israel. It's Smotrich.
נגרש,
We will
נתיישב.
conquer,
אני
expel,
לא שמעתי אף
settle.
ערוץ בינלאומי
It's everything he
שמצטט את
says.
יאיר גולן. אני שמעתי
I
ערוצים
haven't heard
שמצטטים
any
את
international
שר
channel
האוצר
quoting Yair
בצלאל
Golan.
סמוטריץ'.
I heard them
מי שקובע
quoting
במדינת
the
ישראל
Minister of
בממד הזה
Finance,
ובעם היהודי
Smotrich.
הוא
The
בצלאל
only
סמוטריץ'
one
ובן גביר
hurting Israel
ולא
and the
יאיר
Jewish
גולן.
people is Ben Gvir and Smotrich, and not Yair Golan.
לדבר על שלום הפך למילת גנאי.
Talking
אנחנו
about
מדברים
peace has
מדברים על
become a
שלום
bad
ואנחנו
word.
מוחאים כפיים
Here
לשלום.
we're talking about peace and we're clapping or applauding for peace.
לא צריכים להפנות את הגב למשימה
You should never turn your back
הערכית הזאת.
to that
אם היינו משקיעים
lofty
במאמץ
camera.
שאנחנו
If we'd
היום
invest the
מחויבים
effort
להשקיע
that we're
אותו
committed to invest
במלחמה, עם כל
in the
ההיבטים
war
השונים שלה, תארו
and
לעצמכם,
all
עם כל
that
המאמץ
that entails,
שהושקע
if
במלחמה
all of
הזאת,
that
היה
effort
מושקע
would have
בתהליך
been
מדיני,
invested
אין
in
לי
a
ספק
political
שהיינו
process,
יכולים
I
להגיע
have no doubt that we
לתוצאות
would have been
יותר
able
טובות
to reach
ולהבטיח
better
את ביטחונם
results
של
and to
כל
ensure the
תושבי
safety
האזור.
of
ב-7
all of
לאוקטובר היה גם
the
טראומה
citizens of the
מבחינתנו, גם
region.
כחברה ערבית.
October 7th
בואו לא
was a
נשכח,
trauma for us,
כמעט
the
20
Arab
אזרחים ערבים נרצחו ביום הזה,
society too. Let's not
ושישה
forget,
נחטפו.
nearly 20 were murdered that day and 6 were abducted.
והזדהינו והבענו
And
אמפתיה
we
וגינינו,
were empathetic
אבל גם מצד שני
and
כואב
we
לנו
condemned.
וכואב
But on the
עכשיו
other hand,
שבעתיים
we are pained and even more
התמונות
pained
שמגיעות
now
מרצועת עזה.
by the
אנחנו לא
pictures
רואים
that we
סוף
see out of Gaza.
למלחמה הזאת.
We don't see an end to this
ולכן,
war.
לקרוא להפסיק את
And
המלחמה
therefore, calling to end the
דרישה
war
מוסרית
is a
ובצד
moral
לקרוא
requirement.
לשחרר את החטופים, לא רק
And
היום,
calling to
ב-7
release the
לאוקטובר,
hostages,
ב-8
not
לאוקטובר
just today,
שיצאתי
on October
ודיברתי
7th
בשם
and
הדת
October 8th
והערכים
when I
והלאומיות,
spoke
לשחרר את כל
on
החטופים
behalf of my
כולם,
religion
לא
and
היינו מגיעים
nationalism,
ליום הזה והמלחמה
then perhaps
פרצה
we
את
wouldn't have
גבול
reached this
600
situation
ימים.
and the war
אבל
that's
חייבים להסתכל קדימה,
longer than 600
ואני
days. But we
חושב
must look
שהמשבר
forward.
הזה יוצר הזדמנות.
And I think that this
אנשים
crisis is
מתחילים
creating
לחשוב,
an opportunity. People
הטראומה
are
הזאת
starting to think
משפיעה על אנשים,
the
חשוב
trauma impacts
שהמנהיגות
people.
תוביל את
It's important that leadership
האזרחים
takes these
בשני
civil
הצדדים
citizens on both
למקום
sides
אחר
to a different
בחייהם.
place.
תפקידנו כאן
Our role
כמפלגה
here as a party
שמנסה לקדם גם תהליך של פיוס
that's trying to
ושותפות
promote appeasement and partnership
ועשייה לטובת הכלל.
and working for
באתי
the
עכשיו
benefit of all.
מהנגב, מבאר שבע,
I just came from
מהפגנה
Beersheba
של אלפי אנשים. אני
from
אומר
a
לכם, חברים,
protest of
מה
thousands.
שעושה בן
I'm
גביר
telling you,
זה
what
רע
Ben Gvir is
במיעוטו,
doing
להרוס בתים
is
של
evil.
אזרחים נורמטיביים.
He's destroying houses of normative citizens who for decades
באדמות האלו,
have been living on that land,
להרוס להם את הבתים ולהשאיר
destroying their home and leaving them to live in the rubble. They have no solution. They have no settlements in which they can live. But there's something good in this regard. We're demanding that the government stop the demolition and stop disregarding the Arab society. But there's something good about this. But the Israeli Arabs understand that they have to rally to change the political reality in Israel. And I think that in the next election, no less than 70 or 80% of Israeli citizens will vote. And that's why I think that Ben Gvir, in his actions, is preparing the ground for replacing this government and bringing in a better government. Any government that will rise will have a Jewish and Zionist majority. You can count Arab members in the coalition and not in the opposition. There were 4 of us in the previous coalition and 6 in the previous opposition. So anyone who doubts that option of establishing a government that will be engaged with an Arab party is actually impairing the opportunity to make a change, a democratic change to benefit all of the citizens of Israel. How long do I have? And so I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak here to this wonderful audience. I'm optimistic, and I think we're on the right path. Together, we'll be able to change reality for the benefit of us all. Thank you to Mansour Abbas. I'd like to invite Chen Arieli now, Deputy Mayor of Tel Aviv-Yafo, who will talk about hope, pride and prejudice, success of the LGBT battle, and the counter response. Hi. I want to start with one word, a word that sounds small, but it contains a word, closet. We used to think about coming out of the closet as something that has to do with LGBT only, but as a personal act. But each and every one of us live in some kind of closet. A closet is where we are quiet, where we hide our beliefs, our love, who we truly are. It's a place where we were taught that it's smarter or safer sometimes not to talk, not to identify, not to stand out. In today's Israel, unfortunately, being a leftist is a reason for an order, a closet. Being a teacher who dares to speak of equality, reason for a closet. Populism, conservatism, fear, they all create closets for us. They stuff us into there so we don't stand out, we don't put up our head, so we don't know that there are other opportunities. But the truth is, we weren't born for closets. We weren't born to be silent. I'm Chen Arieli. I'm a lesbian, feminist, activist, deputy, Tel Aviv. Mayor. I was born in Haifa. I was very confused girl. It was before the era where I could put in Google, I'm in love with my girlfriend, what can I do? I didn't know anything about being a lesbian. I felt alone, alienated, like I didn't belong anywhere. At the end of the 1990s, I moved to Tel Aviv, which saved my life, and I came out of the closet. There was no hostile legislation, but there was no love from the government, no public policy. It wasn't really safe to be who you are outside of Tel Aviv, not in the media, not in education, and definitely not where the decisions were made. But I knew one thing, I don't intend to live a small life. I wasn't born to hide. And the battle of coming out of the closet is not personal, it's political, just like coming out of every silence, every margin. And this is where my personal story becomes our story. The proud community in Israel was born when being gay was a criminal offense. In 1988, the law was battled, service in IDF, initial budget, small ones, and then the cultural revolution, the education, the flags, the visibility. We're a community that was born in great darkness, and we brought great light. There's no lobby for it, but it needs a voice. In essence, our battle was more than just a clash between parties. It's about hope, because everything starts with a movement that refuses to be belittled. It's about Jews who demanded security, and it's all the same for LGBTs who sought security. When a person sees another person walking with his head high, he thinks maybe I can do that too. Maybe I don't have to be scared either. Just because of that, our battle as LGBT seems threatening, not because it's extreme, but because it's releasing, and it offers people a bigger and more complete life. It turns the light on for people, for places that used to be dark until now, but they try to turn it off. But the light is already there. It burns in our children, in our youth. And I think the most important thing that the battle has told us, it's not just about our identity, it's about our values: liberty, equality, dignity, the ability that we often offer to live a full and safe life. Those who believe in freedom belong to this battle, even if they aren't LGBT, even if they don't live in a big city, even if they aren't out of the closet. We talk about LGBT community as if it's a minority, but it can be a majority. It is a majority. It's a majority of anyone who refuses to live in fear, anyone who knows that my release has to do with your release. We're not looking to erase anyone's identity. We're looking to set it free, to let it be a bridge and not a wall, because identity, whether it's
יכולה להיות גם בית, אבל גם כלא. מה שמשחרר אותנו הוא החיבור בינינו, ההכרה שלנו זו בזה ובאחרים. ההבנה שהחירות שלי שווה משהו רק כשהיא מתקיימת לצד החירות שלך. זאת לא סולידריות, זאת תלות הדדית, זאת הבנה עמוקה של מציאות דמוקרטית. מרוץ השליחים שיצא לדרך של הקהילה הגאה ב-75 שהזכרנו קודם הגיע לאחד השיאים החשובים שלו ב-2018 כשיצאנו למאבק השוויון הגדול בתולדות המדינה. בשיאו שביתה של הקהילה הגאה והפגנת ענק של 100,000 איש בכיכר רבין. מאבק עיקש שהוליד בפעם הראשונה תקצוב ממשלתי מלא של עשרות מיליוני שקלים. הייתה לי הזכות להוביל את המאבק הזה כיו"ר האגודה למען הלהט"ב ולראות איך בתוך כמה ימים המעסיקים הגדולים במשק, רשויות מקומיות ולאומיות והתגייסות מלאה של הקהילה ובני בריתה הצליחו לשנות מציאות. ממש ככה. בסיום יום השביתה פורסם בערוצי החדשות
at the end of the strike, the news showed a survey how there's a majority of the public supports equality for LGBT. Even then, the Zionist religion was supportive. History is something that can happen every day, and we made history. And it's just because of that because of the success of the proud battle that the backlash began. The conservatives parties realized that the battles isn't limited to LGBT. It goes to education. They realized it wasn't dangerous, not because it's dangerous, because it's successful. They cut back on our budgets. They shut our mouths. They legitimated us. But what they don't understand is that we're already out of the closet and we're not going back in. The opposite is true. We're inviting everyone to come out with us. Because the fear is not just ours. They too are scared. They're scared of culture and freedom. They're scared of complexity. They're scared of bravery. They're scared of uncontrollable love. And what do you do when you love? People try to control and reduce. But we know you can't reduce people. You can't erase people, especially not a community that's familiar with the tools for battle, a community that's turned pain into power. Our battle was never about us. It was always a bigger thing, opening doors. And now, when democracy itself is under attack, when freedom of speech is being throttled, we know that we have to be there, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. Because just as we said in the past, a community can change awareness, it can change policy, it can also teach people and organize them. A community that has broken down walls can help others do that too. Yes, we established groups in Afula for the proud youth.
ולהקים עוד ועוד יוזמות ולא לוותר. ידענו להמשיך לצעוד מחובקות ולא לוותר כשדקרו את שירה בנקי במצעד בירושלים.
We were able to break through 70 years of political freeze and have government offices recognize us. We've established institutions, infrastructures. It's not just about identity. It's an architecture of hope. And that's what I'm offering you here today. It's not just a personal story. It's a political proposal, a life, a broader life, a society that understands that it's not afraid of its fear, not afraid of its. And just as in every struggle, there comes the moment where you have to choose whether to be quiet or to speak, whether to hide or come out, whether to wait or lead. So here's my proposal here on this stage. Let's all of us come out of the closet. Anyone who believes in equality, come out. If you believe in free life, come out. If you're not willing to give up hope, come out too. Because hope, like the closet, will not break down, and it needs all of us to grow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chen Arieli. 2 weeks ago, I was at your wonderful conference, and I even took some of your ideas back to Poland with me. I also think that some of the actions you did, the Polish Democratic Opposition succeeded in taking office in December 23. These are the words of Zdzisław Śmiszak in an interview. We'll watch the full interview soon, but first let's invite Ron to say a few words. Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank the Berl Katznelson Foundation for supporting us. And I know that Avner announced it today. Thank you, Avner, Yossi. It's definitely not something to be taken for granted. Although I'm a high-tech entrepreneur, people ask me to get on stage and talk about communication. You want to come to a panel about communication. I have a podcast about communication as if it's a field. It's a niche in the struggle 15 minutes at a conference, talk about digital, which is a secondary niche of a niche. In 2014, the government fell because of a newspaper, the Israel Hayom law. It's a law about regulation so that no one pays money to publish newspapers. That took us to elections. I'll give you even broader context. The state of Israel is now in the abyss because of a prime minister who, despite beyond his stinginess, the core of the craziness of our life is the media. The 2000 case media, the 4000 case media, bribery, fraud, the reform that Kari is now trying to pass. It's the death of media. There's an obsession here. And if I may, the obsession of a little wise and cruel person who understands that everything starts in consciousness, Katergate. His closest advisors, media people. He doesn't surround himself by military seniors, economists. We're in the middle of a tragedy. In the recent years, Bibi built a platform supported by populists around the world. We called it the poison machine. But in my world, I call it an influence, the network influence that reaches 4 to 5 million people a month with messages that are not communication. They are riots in Ra'anana, the hate of the chief of staff, the hate of the Shabak. And on the other hand, you have media, which has no strategy. It's a problem around the world, by the way. I come from the US, but here it's getting worse because of the bad feasibility of a small market. And as a result, our media is currently controlled by tycoons. A Russian billionaire who lives in London, the person who owns the Coca-Cola company in Israel. Another one has cable companies in France. It's all available to buy, to stay in the middle, the normalization machine, while the government is trying to defeat it. It's a media activist platform with technology, data. It's a hope machine just starting out. We're here to be the voice of the liberal democratic awakening in Israel. We want to reach millions. It's only through the network, only with your help, with your support, by sharing and sharing again and resharing again. We create democratic liberal content that people share. More than 100 million views until now, billion users every month on almost every social media, and for pennies. But we're just starting out. We're ambitious, and we'll create a hope machine here that will fight and beat the poison machine. I want to thank the Berl Katznelson Foundation for their support, and we'll see the first cooperation between us soon. In the past 2 years, we took it upon ourselves to tell the story of Hungary, Turkey, Poland. I'm sure you've seen. I want to show you that nothing here is unique, that behind everything is a playbook, a populistic playbook. But in the case of Poland, is a case of hope. And the foundation suggested that we interview Dr. Christoph Schmiszek, who is now in the European Parliament, and I ask that you listen to him carefully because it's an important conversation. And the film that you'll see will be uploaded on Saturday morning. And your role, all of you, is to share it. Thank you. We're Yalla Tikva. Please join us.
Yes, that's me.
I want to thank you for spending the time with us today and in the last few years supporting the Israeli opposition in a very meaningful way, including visiting us and giving us inspiration. Before we start, I'd like you to present yourself to the audience.
My name is Krzysztof Smyszek. I'm a Polish member of the European Parliament. I was a member of the opposition party. After the election in 2023, I was Deputy Justice Minister. 2 years ago, I had the privilege and honor to participate in this beautiful gathering. I was really inspired by your work in Israel, and honestly saying, I took a bit of your ideas to Poland, and I'm pretty sure that also thanks to your involvement and to your ideas, Polish democratic opposition was able to win the election in 2023.
I'd like you to try to describe Poland in 2015. The PIS takes over and in a very aggressive manner tries the way Orban did in Hungary to first go at the courts. What happened to the judiciary in Poland in the first years?
Well, I can tell you what happened in the first days, not years, first days of the new government. They took over the Constitutional Tribunal, which we can compare to your Supreme Court. They once again merged the office of the Minister of Justice and the Prosecutor General. He can do whatever he wants with the opposition, with chasing the opponents, with chasing the civil society. After that, they put their hands on the National Judicial Council, the constitutional independent body that nominates judges.
To our people, it's called the Va'ada Lebchirat Shoftim, which means they can start to politicize the judiciary at scale.
And they started to put their nominees not only to the Supreme Court, but also to the courts of the lower instances, which is the most dangerous for the lives of every citizen, you know?
And we saw hundreds and hundreds of new judges while they try to create a huge propaganda against judges that are...
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a very known pattern around the world, not only in Poland, in Hungary, but many other countries. So the huge smear campaign started. You know, we had like hundreds of huge billboards on the streets, TV shows, TV series, you know, that were designed to present Polish judges as corrupted, as thieves, as perverted, a huge scale propaganda project against Polish judges.
The second move after taking the judiciary was to basically take over every media.
They took over the public media.
Happening right now as we speak in Israel.
Oh my God.
And it means that you take over every microphone.
The good thing in Poland was that the private media, which are extremely influential, stayed independent. But of course, there were so many attempts by using state regulators to take over the private media. They passed a special law against private television, you know.
But basically describing the current affairs in Israel the last few weeks.
Well,
I heard you in one of your speeches telling people, build your own independence media, build your own infrastructure. Is that what you guys did?
Internet is, I mean, it's a tool of hatred, but also it's a tool of, you need to be creative. You need to be envisaging what people could search on the internet. There are still ways of reaching out to people who are maybe not interested in political issues, not interested in social issues. So that was our idea, to reach out to people, not only with a traditional approach, media approach, but also with creative ways of reaching out to people. And you know what? Maybe this is one thing which really worked in Poland. I was like absolutely amazed in 2023 when we won the elections. I remember initiatives of young girls trying to reach out to other young girls by using, I don't know, fashion channels, shopping channels, tools you would never think that can benefit or can contribute to the democratic discussion.
I want to briefly touch the church. And the Christian values that basically enable the autocracy and the populist in Poland. Tell me about this coalition between populist ideas and just extreme religious ideas.
It was always alliance between the altar and the throne, between the church and the state. All the autocrats and dictators, they really want to have a blessing from these religious institutions. And church was very happy to bless them. Why? Because of the money and because of the values. We saw that hundreds of millions of euros every year were pumped to the church as a gratitude, you know.
And they supported, of course, the abortion ban is to please the church.
Of course, of
And
course,
also
of course.
persecuting the LGBT community.
Of course, the government paid its tribute to the church as an award for the support the bishops and the local parishes, local churches provided to the Law and Justice Party. But the line was crossed when the almost complete ban on abortion was introduced.
20, right?
Yes, and that was a red line. Before the ban of abortion, we had mass protests against the destruction of the judiciary, destruction of the independent media. But when you looked at the crowds, they were mostly older people who were participating in the fight for democracy before the communism collapsed. And we were always complaining, where are the young people? Where are the young people? Why they do not care about democracy? Yes, but when they crossed the line, you saw that 70% of hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, there were young women and men supporting women. That was a changing moment, I would say.
And I want to ask you about the years in the desert. There were massive protests. The government was afraid. It retreated for a while, and then it started what we call the salami
strategy,
which is still in power in Israel. And I want to ask you, how were you able to regroup? Because that's for us is probably the most important lesson.
Yeah, we noticed the demonstrations died out. We couldn't see this energy, involvement, determinations. At that time, as politicians, we were terrified, seeing, oh my God, the civil society is giving up. I was also terrified that people just don't care. Now I can tell you, this is a natural process. They couldn't see the immediate effects of the demonstration. So now, from the perspective of time, I can tell you, nothing is lost. Only because people are not going to the streets. Nothing is lost because people are not screaming every day on the Kaplan Square. Nothing is lost because the energy and the frustration and determination is deeply in their heart. I can tell you from the perspective of time because I saw the turnout in 2023, which was the highest ever.
You guys almost shocked the world with a huge boost of hope that we can overturn populism. There is hope here.
At the very beginning, we promised we are going to form a coalition of democratic parties. From the very beginning, we were saying we are going separately, but one day after elections, we are going to meet at one table and we are going to form a government. People, when they go to the voting stations, they were voting for the left, for the liberals, for the center-right, but knowing that whoever you vote who is Democrat, one day after, there will be a democratic government, and that worked.
You were then appointed to the Deputy of Justice Minister. I think Israelis would love to know how hard it is after 8 years of polluting and politicizing almost every democratic institution in the country. How hard is it to go back?
Oh my God, this is really hard. Sometimes you think it is not doable, because just to give you a picture, in Poland we have 10,000 judges. More than 2,000 of them were appointed by the illegal National Judicial Council. From the lowest to the Supreme Court, they issued more than 3 million judgments in different areas like criminal law, civil law, family law, whatever judgment you can imagine. So what we did from the very beginning in the Justice Ministry, we said we are going to preserve all the judgments which were issued by illegal judgments. People cannot pay the costs of the destruction of the justice system.
It never ends.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Autocrats, they learn from each other. I'm pretty sure that your prime minister, he was consulting with the Polish Law and Justice government how to effectively take over the Supreme Court. They have a network. They learn from each other. We are still not as good as them, in supporting each other.
But still, I'd like you, from your perspective, to try and give us some hope.
I remember your energy and your involvement not only like 2 years ago at the conference. I also participated in the demonstrations surrounded by thousands of Israeli flags and people screaming democracy, democratia. I saw your mobilization. I saw your determination. And please do not be disappointed when your colleagues, when your neighbors, when your friends are saying, I'm fed up with demonstrations, I'm fed up with being vocal about democracy. Look at Poland, look what happened in Canada, look what happened in Australia.
Christoph, I first of all want to thank you wholeheartedly for the support. I think that if populists all over the world are meeting constantly to write the playbook, it's time for us.
Yes, definitely.
Attacked globally by populism to write our own playlist, and you guys have proven that it's possible. So we get inspiration from you.
So, guys, don't give up. You are not alone. You are supported by so many people that believe that Israel can once again be a leader in democratic changes and democracy will prevail.
Thank you to Ran Harnevo and Yishuv Shmita.
השר לביטחון פנים לשעבר במשרדו, אין כמעט ישראלי שלא מרגיש. ואת המחיר הגבוה ביותר...
There's hardly anyone who doesn't feel the absence of Omer Bar-Lev, and most of all the Arab population. But this is a reality that must be about the hope of changing reality through hope. I'm inviting Omer Bar-Lev to speak. Former Minister of Homeland Security. I wanted to start by saying good afternoon. But how can we use the word good when we're 601 days where our hostages are dying and withering in those terrible tunnels in Gaza? So excuse me, pardon me for that. I wondered what to call my speech, and I decided to call it, Can Things Be Done Differently? And there's a big question mark after that. Can things be done differently? I think that part of the goal of this conference is to show that, yes, things can be done differently, but it's not simple, and there's a big question mark here. So what bums me out? I'm bummed that for 15 years we hear that Israel sent suitcases with money to Hamas. It's almost right, but it's not absolutely true. For 13 years, Netanyahu was prime minister. He transferred suitcases with money to Hamas. But in the year and a half where the change government was in office, there wasn't even one suitcase. And not $1 went to Hamas. And I'm assuming that if I'd run a survey here before saying that, most of the people here and most of the public in Israel isn't aware of that because it's not mentioned. So I'm not surprised that the current government and its cronies don't mention it. But it's our responsibility, opinion leaders and media personnel must tell the story that things can be done differently. And now, the issue that I was asked to come here, Homeland Security in Israel, and not just crime on the Arab street. But it has to do with the same thing of whether things can be done differently. And if can, it's not enough to do it. You have to talk about it. There's a graph here of the number of murder victims in the Arab society. I took office in the middle of 2020, and I was Minister of Homeland Security until 2022, just a year and a half. So you can see that in the full year, 2022, where I was Minister of Homeland Security, the number of murder victims was 107. And look what happened afterwards. It went out, it grew by more than double. It's horrible. But you know what? They say I'm lucky. What's my fortune? That such a terrible minister followed me that suddenly the public thinks how wonderful I was and how great the ministry was when I was in office. So I want to refer your attention not only to the last 2 terrible years, but also take a look at the period before then. And the graph clearly shows that in relating to crime in the Arab community, for years, the Israeli governments didn't care. They didn't care that Arabs were killing Arabs, and they didn't make time for it until we came along. I came into office 1 month after Guard of the Walls. It was a very difficult period, and not only were we able to stop it, we were able to reduce it by 17%. Let's not just look at that. Let's look at other issues too. The number of women who are murdered or who are murdered every year, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, all women in Israel. Here too, see that in 2022, in the year when I was in office, the number of female murder victims, each one is a whole world, but the number went down to 22. And just like in the previous slide, the number of women murdered increased by 1.5 in the year thereafter. And unfortunately, it's still going up. And once again, it's a phenomenon that we've seen in the years before I took office. And, or you could say that in the year that I was in office, there was a decline, a significant decline. Let's look at another element. Number of casualties in motor vehicle accidents. In 2022, there were 352. The year afterward, it went up. And in 2024, it went up by almost double. Want another area? I'm assuming most of you didn't know this. Let's look at another area. On in January 2021, a law was passed prohibiting the consumption of prostitution, meaning that the man is the person who is committing an offense when he takes a prostitute. The law was passed 6 months before I took office. At the end of the year, there were almost 1,400 complaints against such men. The year afterward, it went up to nearly 3,000. And now look how horrible. It's down in 2023, and in 2024, it's nearly zero. So these figures are terrible. And the question is, how did we manage to do that? Did we make brave decisions? I don't know if we took brave decisions. I would say that it's a matter of vision, plan, proper decisions based on the plan, and then a Sisyphic battle, daily battle to ensure that these things are happening. Just as an example, I'll go back and say how we did this. I'll tell you a secret. If you promise not to tell anyone. In my first 6 months in office, the second half of 2021, I didn't say anything. I didn't discuss this with the chief superintendent or anyone in the police. So how did it happen? I made great decisions. When I took office, I appointed 2 women to 2 very significant positions. One, Yael Sinai, She was appointed to be in charge of gender issues in the Ministry of Homeland Security and Israel Police and the prison service. The other woman that I appointed, Orit Aya, an Ethiopian woman, I appointed her to deal with the issue of over-policing against Ethiopian descent. I'm sure you all remember that term. And I gave them my support, and I set a policy. And every police officer in Israel knew that that was the minister's policy and that Yael and Orit represent the minister on this matter. And look at what happened. This is what happened. On the other hand, what is also very sad, that as soon as a minister comes in with a horrible fascist settlement policy, the results are as we've seen in the graphs. So I want to go back to the question of whether it can be different. So yeah, the answer is yes. We've proven that it can be done differently. But, and there's a big but, a huge but. The fact that it's possible isn't enough. The fact that we succeed isn't enough because in the today's reality of faith, even if you do something and succeed, it's not enough. Just as I said earlier, this government doesn't want to address these issues. And that's why it comes back to us. And it doesn't matter if it has to do with Homeland Security or defense against Hamas, which I spoke about earlier, or any other thing that we've done in the change government. We've succeeded because we worked for the citizens of the state of Israel and we managed to do good. We proved that things can be different, but as I said, it's not enough. We have to resonate it. We have to talk about it. And if we resonate it and don't talk about it, then why are we surprised that a part of our public goes with its head down? And so once again, this conference is so important because it says, yes, we can do things differently, but even that is our responsibility. We have to talk about it and believe in it, because once we talk about it and believe in it, it'll happen. And of course, this saying, it's not enough for justice to be done, it has to be seen. And our role is to say, yes, things can be done differently. There is hope, and we will do it. Thank you very much.